John Korir just ran the 5th fastest marathon time ever on the streets of Chicago in a Metaspeed Sky prototype. But I think it'll be a while before that shoe makes it to the public. So in the meantime, let's take a look at the current Metaspeed Sky Paris and see how my pair has held up after 100 miles. Yo, what's going on? My name is Kofuzi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube. And today I want to talk to you guys all about the Metaspeed Sky Paris after 100 miles. But before I give my thoughts on this shoe and how it's held up over time, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that ASICS sent to me for the purpose of review, so I did not have to pay for these shoes. However, no one's paying me to make this video or to include their shoe in this video. And no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Metaspeed Sky Paris after 100 miles. And let's start with how I've been using these shoes. I've been using these shoes for racing, fast workouts, and my longest run. So for racing, I raced the London Marathon in them earlier this year. I really enjoyed them for that race. Although I didn't have the best day, it's not something that I can blame on the shoes. And my fastest run was probably my most recent run, which was also, other than a quick taper session, it was the shortest run I did in the shoe, which was a total of 11 miles. And I had 400-meter repeats to run at about, I think they were assigned to be about 5K pace, but the paces I was given made them closer to maybe a 3K pace for me. And the longest run I ever did in them, other than the marathon, was a 22-mile long run. And I felt like for all three of those use cases, very fast running, very long running, and marathon racing, I felt like the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Paris did really well for me. I think the magic of this shoe is the foam, which gives it the cushion and also the responsiveness that I'm looking for in a racing shoe, but it also gives it an incredible lightness. This is one of the lightest racing shoes on the market today. And at a time when shoes are still getting bigger and having more and more foam, keeping a shoe lightweight is still really a killer feature. Now, I do think that it's a little bit more cushioned in terms of the foam than the last version of the Metaspeed Sky Plus was. And I think that makes it a little bit less aggressive of a shoe, which can be good or bad depending on exactly what type of experience you're looking for in your race shoes. And if I had a half marathon or a marathon coming up and I had to pick between the Metaspeed Sky Paris and the Metaspeed Sky Plus, for me and my preferences, I think I might go with the Metaspeed Sky Plus today, although that just might be my sentimentality coming through as I've had really good, successful race days in the Metaspeed Sky Plus. Next, let's take a look at how the shoe has physically been holding up over the last 100 miles. And first, I want to say that this is race product we're talking about here, so it's not going to have the same levels of longevity and durability as would a shoe that you're using as your daily trainer. And this is a trade-off that I think that we're all willing to make when it comes to race or pinnacle performance product. That being said, at least visually, it looks like the foam on my Metaspeed Sky Paris has taken quite a beating, especially around some of the edges and in some of the painted areas of the midsole foam. It does look like there are some gashes and bits of scraping that are starting to happen, which is frankly a little bit more damage than I typically see for me and my race shoes at 100 miles. Just keep in mind that a lot of this wear is purely cosmetic. A lot of these foams can't really take on color like intrinsically, so that color has to be painted on. And I do think that most of the worst looking damage is just the paint that's starting to chip and wear away. But I could say that the foam itself still feels really good. It still feels like there's a lot of life left into it. Still a great amount of cushion, still a great amount of bounce back. So it's compressing and decompressing really well, even at 100 miles. In fact, I have closer to 120 miles now on this particular pair of shoes. And I do think that I could get another marathon out of these if I needed to. And after that, after about 150, 160 miles or so of kind of using these as a race shoe, I think I could then kind of relegate them or demote them to being a really great workout shoe in my rotation. The one thing that I would note though is I think that the shoe is getting slightly mushier over time. And I think that's the biggest difference between the Metaspeed Sky Paris and the Metaspeed Sky Plus, is that the foam is a little bit more compressive and maybe similarly or slightly less decompressive. There's less pushback from it. And I think as the miles have been wearing on for the Metaspeed Sky Paris, I feel like it's becoming even more cushioned and bouncing back with just a little bit less pep than at least I remember from having a fresh pair of shoes. But my most recent workout was the fastest workout that I did in the shoe, and it still felt great for use in workouts. So it's not something that I think is anywhere near its end of life. As far as the rubber on the outsole goes, there is a couple of spots where it's wearing down a little bit, where it's becoming smooth. And I'm not really concerned about that amount of wear. That's something that I would expect to see after 100 miles in a race shoe. Something that does concern me though is that there is a bit of wear at the intersection of the midsole and the outsole in a couple of spots on this shoe. There's a point where the foam is fraying away from where the edge of that outsole is. I think a lot of that happens because of the way that this foam compresses and decompresses so much, but it is a potential source of detachment, and that is something that concerns me. As far as the upper goes, I think it's holding up very well. It still looks to me like a very fresh shoe as far as the upper is concerned, and it smells surprisingly not bad. So I think that the upper is fantastic on the Metaspeed Sky Paris. It's the best upper that ASICS has put on their Metaspeed series shoes. That being said, it still is a little bit of a pinky toe crusher. It's not that the last is squeezing these toes as I'm running in it. There's just something about what's happening with my foot inside the shoe that these pinky toes are still feeling a little bit of pressure towards the end of every workout or long run that I put into the shoe. Now, before we wrap up the video, let's take a moment to talk about the ASICS brand more generally and see what a rotation would look like if you're a Metaspeed Sky Paris fan. Now, whenever I think about a running shoe rotation or approach a running shoe brand, I always like to start with the Daily Trainer. And from ASICS, the one that I prefer is the Nova Blast, and this is the Nova Blast 4. This is a shoe that is fun, bouncy, and cushioned. You could do the bulk of your daily training in, and it's got the durability to handle the majority of your weekly runs. And this is a really fun example of a daily trainer. And then I think that the Metaspeed Sky Paris would come in as the racing shoe that you're going to be using to pair along with the Nova Blast 4. Now, this could be a really fun 2-shoe rotation in and of itself, but if you want to add a couple more shoes in or just understand how the other ASICS shoe in the brand fit in, let's talk about some more. If you want something that's a little bit more cushioned as a daily trainer, maybe you need a little bit more cushion and a little bit more stability than what the Nova Blast has, then I would take a look at the Glide Ride Max. And this is the max cushion shoe in the ASICS lineup that I have been really enjoying. It's really comfortable, it's really cushioned. For days where I just want to be really nice to my feet, this is the shoe that I would be reaching for. And then for your speed workouts, where it's something where you want something a little bit faster and a little bit more kind of purpose built than the Nova Blast 4, and it's kind of do-it-all nature is built, and something that maybe isn't quite as important or as big of a day as you would reach for your race day shoe, I think that I would look at the Magic Speed 4 from ASICS for that experience. It has some daily training foams in it like the Nova Blast 4. It has a little core of race foam in it like the Metaspeed Sky Paris, and it's got a carbon fiber plate, so it's got a little bit of both worlds built into it. And then if you wanted to go real crazy and add a 5th shoe to this rotation, I would look at the Super Blast 2. This is one of my favorite shoes that ASICS is making at the moment. It's got a bunch of FF Turbo plus that same foam that's in the Metaspeed Sky Paris, but it's got also a little bit of daily training foam in it as well. And I put it on this side of the spectrum because I think of this shoe as a really great long run workout shoe. And by that, what I mean is it can do really easy running and kind of really low and slow relaxed stuff, kind of like the Glide Ride Max would, but it's also really great because of the foam at picking up the pace. So if you've got a long run with a bunch of marathon miles in there, something where you got to pick up the pace and do a race type effort, the extra comfort and cushion of the Super Blast 2, plus its race day heritage, make it a really fun and fantastic choice. Now there's certainly a lot of alternatives that you can go through in the ASICS lineup. ASICS has a bunch of shoes, just like a lot of the other very big brands do, that you could sub in and out. For the Nova Blast 4, you could bring in the Cumulus. For the Glide Ride Max, you can bring in the Nimbus. And actually for me, one thing that I would change, and not something that I'm recommending, but something that I personally have been doing in this spot for your workout or session shoe, is to actually reach out for the other marathon racer from ASICS, and that's the Metaspeed Edge. I think that the difference in the way that this shoe turns over and prioritizes snappy turnover and quick bounce back from your foot strike make it a really fun shoe for my fastest of workouts. So in reality, while the Metaspeed Sky Paris is my race shoe, I'm also using it for my big workouts, my mile repeats, my longer threshold efforts. And then for my faster stuff that's more towards VO2 max, that's where I personally, as someone that is a Sky person, that's where I have been reaching for the Edge, because I just feel like it's a great shoe for like 5K, 10K efforts for me. Now, I'm not recommending that people go out and buy the Metaspeed Edge specifically for that, but in reality, in terms of how I use that shoe, this is where it has been fitting in for me. Now, let's wrap up the video by talking about the buying guide, and we'll also look at some alternatives that you'll likely want to consider. The Metaspeed Sky Paris is one of the lightest racing shoes on the market today, and it's a great combination of cushion and speed. ASICS currently has two different sets of marathon racing shoes in its lineup though, the Metaspeed Sky Paris and the Metaspeed Edge Paris, and I think those two shoes are targeted at different types of runners depending on the way that your foot hits the ground, the way that your legs turn over, and basically just the sensations that you're looking to prioritize in your race product. And if you like what the Metaspeed Sky Paris has to offer, I think that at $250, it is a fantastic price. Now, it is going to be hard to get, and all the shoes that I'm about to talk to you guys about are going to be difficult to get because right now we are at the tail end of fall marathon racing season, and it's like that scene in Fast and the Furious when they're looking for their stolen engines and they're freaking out because it's race wars next week. And when else are you going to be able to get another pair of engines this quickly? Same thing is going on for race shoes. Nevertheless, let's take a look at the other shoes that are out there that you're going to want to consider once inventory levels get back to normal. And the first shoe that I want to talk about is one that I recently just spent a lot of time talking about when I did my Adios Pro 4 review. Now, I feel like both Nike and the other brand that I'm going to talk about today have two different types of marathon racing shoes that are each targeted at, again, a different type of runner. So Nike, ASICS, and the third brand that I'll talk about later in the video are all kind of doing the same thing. Instead of making one and only one type of race shoe, depending on the different preferences of runners, they're making different types of race pinnacle product, which I think is an incredibly good thing and a sign of how lucky we are as runners to be running today in 2024. Now, I think that the person that likes the Metaspeed Sky Paris is probably also going to like the types of sensations that are going on in the Alphafly 3. I feel like it suits the similar type of runner. I think there's a great amount of cushion in the Alphafly 3 and a good amount of decompression and bounce back. I personally don't love the Alphafly 3 as much as prior iterations of the Alphafly, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the changes that they've made to the Zoom AirPods. I think the Zoom AirPods are the real secret sauce to the Alphafly series, and I don't know if it's just a visual trick that's happening to me or what, but it seems like they've changed the position of the Zoom AirPods in the Alphafly 3, moving them further back or closer to the middle of your arch, behind the pads of your feet. And I feel like they've also made them smaller than they used to be in, say, the Alphafly 1. And I feel like with the Alphafly 1, I was landing the pads of my feet right on those Zoom AirPods, and as those toes were starting to push off and I was getting some leverage off of the pads of my feet, that's when the Zoom AirPods were pushing up against them and giving me that really wonderful and seemingly effortless bounce that you get from Alphafly. I feel like with the change in the position of the AirPods moving more towards the arch of the shoe, it feels like I'm kind of missing the AirPods and it's not doing the same thing. It's kind of like when you're bouncing off a trampoline and like the timing's not right and your knees buckle a little bit. I'm kind of getting a very micro sensation of that in the Alphafly 3. Nevertheless, if the Alphafly 3, depending on your foot strike and gait, works for you, I feel like it's a shoe that's going to really work well for you. And we've seen some of the fastest athletes in the world run with great success in this shoe. And I think the Metaspeed Sky Paris is ultimately trying to target a very similar type of sensation where you're getting that great amount of cushion in the forefoot and then popping off, pushing up against the pads of the feet. So I feel like both of these shoes are trying to do very similar things, although they're doing it with very different types of technology. If you are looking to get into a pair of Alphafly 3, there is going to be a premium there though, because this shoe comes in at $285. Now, the next brand that I want to talk about is Puma, and they're another brand that has two different types of race shoes, again, targeting two different types of runners. And I feel like Puma is also targeting the same two types of runners that both Nike and ASICS are targeting. And the shoe that I want to talk about today is going to be the Puma Fast R2. I feel like the Puma Fast R2 gives you a really nice sense of compression when your foot hits the ground, and that carbon fiber plate I feel like is very rigid and you get a really strong push-off sensation as your foot leaves the ground into your next stride. I love the sensation that's going on with the combination of the thick carbon fiber plate and the aliphatic TPU foam. It's probably one of my favorite foams that is on the market today. The only downside to this shoe being that it's quite a bit heavier. So if the lightness of the Metaspeed Sky Paris is one of its biggest benefits, the heaviness of the Fast R2 is one of its biggest weaknesses. I still think it's a really fun and fast shoe to run in despite the weight, but that's something you definitely want to keep in mind. And again, it's targeting that really big amount of compression in the forefoot with a really strong toe-off sensation that's happening for those big, powerful strides, even if the speed or frequency of your turnover may suffer just a little bit, just like the other two shoes that I've talked about in this review. Now, the Fast R2 also comes in a little bit more expensive than the Metaspeed Sky Paris. The Puma Fast R2 comes in at $260, so $10 more to get into that one. And then I think the last shoe that I want to talk about is the shoe that I've talked about a little bit already today, and that's the Metaspeed Sky Plus. It's the last version of the Metaspeed. Now, from what I can tell, ASICS is still selling this shoe on its website, and I don't think it's just that they have a lot of leftover inventory. I think that it could be a sign of a very maturing race product market, where it's not that each shoe is leaps and bounds better than the previous year's shoe, but now we're going to have different models that again are focusing very small subsets of preferences. And so if you do still like the difference in feeling in the Metaspeed Sky Plus, or if you want the newer version which has a little bit more cushion to it and prioritizes the compression a little bit more than the decompression, then the Metaspeed Sky Paris is going to be the option for you. Both of these shoes come in at $250 though, so it's going to be the same price for either of the two. And like I said, when it comes to racing, it might just be that I had a really good day in these, but I think if I were to race today, of these two shoes, I'd pick the Metaspeed Sky Plus. So those are my thoughts on the Metaspeed Sky Paris after 100 miles. Let me know if you in the comments if you have any questions about this shoe or any of the shoes that I talked about today. Or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Mondays and Thursdays over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. I'd love to talk to you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?